You should see my screen. I will, okay. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome. I really think we are living very extraordinary times when we are 200 people from all over the world just chatting as if we were in the same room, no one traveling. So even though we are living in a very strange and difficult context with this pandemic, we also have to see how impressive it is what we can achieve without even traveling. So I'm Olivier de Sadler. I work for the Europark Federation. I'm the project manager of a LIFE project called NaturAdapt, which is led by Réserve Naturelle de France. And we will have the chance to meet the lead coordinator, Anne-Cerise Tissot, who is presenting right after me. So this is the second episode of a series that we are doing on climate change. So this LIFE NaturAdapt project is really looking at how protected areas should adapt to climate change and what does climate change, how does climate change impact the protected areas and nature conservation in general. So today, in this second episode, we will present a work in progress. So we are not sharing a result of a 5-year scientific study. What we are sharing with you is really the work we are doing, so on the project, so LIFE NaturAdapt, and in the Europark Task Force on Climate Change, which is a subgroup of experts who are all working on different aspects of this challenge, which is to adapt to climate change in protected areas. Today we will present the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of European protected areas in a changing climate. So Anne-Cerise will tell us more about this. I would like to make sure that we all know that this project is made possible thanks to the support of a number of organizations, among which LIFE, OFB, which is the Biodiversity Agency in France, and the Ministry of Ecology in France. The program of the day, I will give you a short introduction and present the outcomes of what has been done in the SIGEN seminar, which happened late in March this year. Then Anne-Cerise will give us more context of why this SWOT analysis and what we are presenting today. And then Stuart from the Scottish Natural Heritage and Myrte from Pure Water and Nature in the Netherlands will go deeper into the topic and share with you the where we stand in our thinking process by presenting a highlight of this SWOT analysis. Obviously, we will keep the time short. It's a 90-minute session altogether, so we won't really have the time to go deep into the technical aspects. Okay, we are trying to find this right balance between giving you enough information and something you can work with, but at the same time we cannot go in the details. So don't hesitate to come back to us afterwards if you have more questions. We will share our email addresses or contacts. So this exercise, besides being a learning experience, is really trying to create some kind of a community, or at least a network of people who are working on climate change. So I'll go in my presentation. It should last about 10 minutes. I'll be short. So I'm presenting the outcomes. So what we have been doing during this seminar, which was open to everyone, but we could only welcome about 25 people. Well, first, our topic is about adaptation. And so I wanted to remind everyone that adaptation, or to adapt, means to change something in order to make it suitable for a new use or situation. I think this is very much our concern, and we are living it every day. That's not new, I think, but it's new that it is so high on the political agenda. Well, with the SIGEN seminar, it's a seminar, so we were supposed to meet in Germany in a very nice location with 25 people, and have a good 2 days of working sessions. Unfortunately, we were hit by this travel ban related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so people could not travel. So we had to adapt very fast within a fortnight. And we didn't want to cancel it because we feel climate change and nature conservation is important. So we just adapted ourselves and we went digital. So basically what I will present is the result of this seminar, but which was 100% online. So this is what it looked like. It is less romantic than a nice countryside setting or natural park, okay? But it worked. So what we did, we had 25 participants from about 13 countries. And I say about 13 countries because you have people from somewhere living somewhere else. So basically, it's difficult to count where they are from. So we couldn't do a 2 full day meeting. Obviously, you cannot spend a full day behind in a Zoom session like that. So we decided to go for 3 online sessions, 3 morning sessions of 90 minutes each, with 7 webinars and 4 case studies. So that's the good news if you are attending today, is that you are attending 1 webinar, but you will have access to 7 more that we are publishing. So that is one of the advantages of doing a seminar online, is that you can record the presentation and disseminate it to a broader audience, which would not have been the case if we had done it in real life. And these webinars include 4 case studies. So we don't want to work from the top down, we really want to work from the ground up. And so we are looking at who's doing what, who are the innovators, who are the people who are experiencing stuff. And so based on that, we are trying to build a case for protected areas in a changing climate. The other objective, obviously, of a seminar was to collaborate. And we were trying to collaborate on working together on drafting a white paper for policymakers. So that's the goal of the task force, at least the first goal. And well, we had to find a way to enable people to collaborate. And so we leveraged the cloud technology, and we use forms and collaborative documents. And we managed to produce 1 resource library, a digital ID box, and 1 who's who. And then we had a number of discussions. Obviously, the informal chat is the more difficult thing to organize when you do an online seminar, okay? But still, with experience, we could learn how to do it. Okay, so here I will just touch to every presentations that were given, so that you have an idea, and then you can go and look for them on the web and watch them if you feel it's interesting. So first of all, the president of Europark, Ignace Shops, gave us a short speech highlighting the main trends, global trends that are underlying global changes, so climate change and biodiversity loss. So that's very important. When we discuss climate change, basically, in our mind, we think about global changes, which include biodiversity loss. We tend not to mention it because this is our day-to-day job. But still, it's very important that when we discuss climate change, we try to bridge the gap between climate change and biodiversity loss, because we believe those are the 2 sides of the same coin. The key message from Ignace Shops was, well, there is urgency. He used the phrase that was used in the European Parliament, our house is on fire. But basically what he's saying is that protected areas have a role to play in building a future sustainable society. And so it's the right time to be vocal, to make some noise, and to make sure that politicians and decision makers do understand the role of nature in building a sustainable society. Then we went to, well, we had a presentation from Anne-Cerise Tissot, who was representing the LIFE NaturAdapt project, and she presented the methodology we are working on. So we are working on building a methodology to adapt for protected area managers to adapt to climate change. And so she formalized the key concept. We felt it was important to make sure that even though we were working from the ground up, we had some, well, a few theoretical concepts that were clearly framed, I would say. And so she explained, or she reminded us what were the concepts behind adaptation. So vulnerability assessment, adaptation capacity, sensitivity, exposure to risk. And it was also an occasion to really clarify that the vulnerability assessment is actually the keystone of this whole process. So this is something that is very important. Speaking of vulnerability assessment, Stuart, who you will meet today, explained how they did that for the Scottish natural features. So basically, in his presentation, he explained which were the main steps to actually do a vulnerability assessment, which in their case they call the risk assessment. We can discuss which is the right idiom, but I don't think it will help us much. What is important is that it really helped formalize, create a formal analysis of what are the potential itineraries for climate change. So which scenarios are probable, and in those conditions, how will it affect the different ecosystems? And that the different steps include, obviously, modeling the process itself, but then collating data sources, expert opinions, and so on. And then the actual evaluation or assessment of each natural and socioeconomic feature that were included in the protected areas in Scotland. And why do we do this? Basically, it's to allow for planification. So you do this assessment, it enables you to go and create your plan. Okay, then we had Ainice Boutron from the Basque Country. She explained how they did the actual planning. And here, I will be very short, but it's very interesting. Knowing that they already had management plans for protected areas and for managing the land in the Basque Country, they analyzed what they were doing today in the light of climate change. And then they prioritized the climate measures, and they redesigned the measures if they were not fit, or included new measures where there was a gap. So that was a very pragmatic approach, but they had to deal with 4,000 something actions. So you'd better be pragmatic in that case. Ainice also highlighted the need to include your work in a more general framework. We are not living on an island. And so, well, some of us do actually, sorry about that. Basically, you have to make sure your work on climate change is included in a broader framework, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, the Regional Climate Change Plan or Strategy, and so on and so forth. Okay. Then we had a very interesting presentation from Portofino in Italy, where they have implemented and all this, and basically what they found is that climate change was an opportunity to improve your relationship with stakeholders. All of a sudden, you are all together on the same boat, on the same side of the challenge. And so it's not protected areas against local stakeholders. It's local stakeholders and protected areas together together against climate change, or at least to tackle it. And we finished our presentations basically by looking at the legal framework in France, and to see whether there was a good integration between climate change policies or strategies and biodiversity loss plans. And the conclusion was no. Basically, protected areas are barely mentioned in climate plans, and biodiversity strategy barely takes into account climate change. So there is obviously something to do there to make sure that policies do create a plan that is consistent and that will bring positive impacts both on tackling climate change and tackling biodiversity loss. Yeah, so, sorry, I forgot to move my slides, but you got the point. Yeah, so on the contribution side, I will be very quick. There's not much to say beside the fact that we used the cloud technology to gather resources. So we built together a prototype of a collaborative online library. It was done through a simple online form, and this is accessible to all. So you will receive the link, and you will also receive the link to contribute. I think it's a good experience that we are doing. We also work on an ID box. That one is not public because I didn't get the authorization. It may be rather personal, but basically it's possible to collect IDs from a large crowd and to collate it and to make it accessible. So that's just for the example. We also created a who's who. I'm not sharing it. It was for the purpose of the meeting itself. But okay, so my conclusions. Well, climate change is a big deal, obviously. It's a major threat to life on Earth. We are the first line as a nature conservation community to understand that. Now we have an opportunity. It's also an opportunity to innovate, as we are doing today, gathering 200 people online to discuss the topic. And it's an opportunity to collaborate with the common goal of improving nature in Europe. And then the other conclusion, that was a side effect is that we can leverage cloud technologies to increase our reach and exchanges. Okay? We don't need to travel every time to meet. Again, all presentation material will be available online. Thank you very much for your attention. Now, Anne-Cerise will tell us more about the context of this SWOT analysis.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So I'm going to do a short introduction about why we are doing a SWOT analysis in this context. So I'm Anne-Cerise Tissot. I'm the LIFE NaturAdapt project manager. I work for Réserve Naturelle de France. That is a national NGO in France gathering all the natural reserves. And we are the lead partner of the LIFE NaturAdapt project. So I will be quite short, but just to give you the global overview of what we are doing with the task force. So first of all, just a reminder about the LIFE NaturAdapt project. It aims at proposing tools for protected area managers to help them take into account climate change in their practices. That's the main goal of the project, but it is also designed to enhance the context in which managers evolve and have to adapt. So in this context, decision makers are clearly also a target of our project. One of the tools to reach the decision makers is to write a white paper. It is to be published at the European scale, and it aims at explaining our needs and our problems and how decision makers can help us. It is currently the main work of the task force. And the idea is that we first defined our common values, where we stand. To write this white paper, we have to agree about what we think globally on this subject. And then the second step that we are doing now and that we are going to present to you today is assessing the situation of European protected areas towards climate change. And to do that, we chose a tool that is pretty common called SWOT analysis. And it will be our basis, our diagnosis for the white paper content. So where do we start? we have to analyze what's our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and the threats. So I will present, then when we have done this SWOT analysis, the idea is to identify who exactly we aim for, because decision makers is a quite large category. So we need to focus on some very particular decision makers and see who we want to aim for and for what purpose. And that's why that's the third step. And the last one, of course, is to write the content, the white paper. But before writing, we need to go through those different steps. So now I will just present you the common values and where we stand that we defined with the task force. And then the SWOT analysis will be presented by Stuart and Mirt later on. So our common values, we have 5 points that we defined for our basis of work. The first one is that nature is endangered, and that with climate change, it's even more important to protect it and restore it. The second one is that nature is a condition for developing our societies and reaching sustainable development goals. So we all know that the economy is not possible without nature. The third one is that there's an opportunity with climate change, first to put nature high on the political agenda, and then also for ourselves to rethink the role of protected areas and the way we manage it. The fourth is that protected areas networks are a critical part of the solution. They provide many things like scientific knowledge, experimenting, innovative approaches, securing benefits for nature, etc. There's a long list. And the last one is that we shouldn't do it alone. So caring for nature is a collective responsibility, and also it ought to be done together, collaboratively. So that's the 5 principles that we agreed on before going through the SWOT analysis. So now Stuart will present the strengths and weaknesses that are the parts that are internal to the diagnosis, and Mirt will present the opportunities and the threats that are more external, that we don't, it doesn't really depend on the protected areas, but more about the general context. Okay, thanks for attention. I hope I was clear, and I will be able to answer your questions at the end of the webinar, as Olivier said.
So, thank you very much, Anne-Sophie.
You're welcome. I stopped sharing my screen. Okay, you did.
Yeah. So, Stuart, whenever you are ready. Let's go. You are mute, Stuart.
Am I unmuted now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yeah.
I'll try that again. Good morning, everybody. And I see we're now up to 213 participants, which is very exciting. So following on from, sorry, I should say, I'm Stuart Pritchard. I'm a nature reserves advisor with Scottish Natural Heritage. And I'm part of the Europarks Climate Change Task Force. Following on from Anne-Sophi's introduction, then, I'm now looking at the strengths and weaknesses from our SWOT analysis. So a subgroup of us went through this analysis, and in short, we identified 7 strengths and 4 weaknesses, which I'll now take you through quickly. There's a lot of information on the slides, so I'll try not to repeat all of that. So there are, first of all, our 7 strengths, but you can see that later. So straight into the first one. This is our strongest card, I believe. That nature is the basis of life, as Reese was saying. It's the basis of the economy. It's the basis for lots of, well, just about everything we do. Our air, water, food, our clothes, our shelters. It makes possible our transport and the recreational places we go. It regulates climate. It recycles our waste. It does everything. Without nature, we wouldn't be here. And I think that's an absolute fundamental, it's a very strong starting point. Our protected areas represent nature at its best functioning. It shows how nature could work if it's cared for elsewhere, and what we might aim for in restoring nature in other parts. And it also gives us a chance to overcome what might be described as the intergenerational amnesia, how people forget from one generation to the next how good nature was. We don't believe the stories from our grandparents about how much nature there used to be around. But you can still see some of this in our protected areas. We are organised. If there's one thing about protected areas, we have strong organisations. We have networks of networks across Europe at all different scales, of international, European, national, local. We have protected areas for different purposes, for biodiversity, geodiversity, we have them for landscape, for recreational areas. And we recognise that they serve three important functions. They all recognise that an area is of some special value to society. Many of them provide some sort of form of facilitating power to an authority or an organisation to manage and protect those areas. And in fact, some of them, in the Natura sites, for example, have a strong protecting role also. With our protected areas come a large workforce of people who not only know their nature and their protected areas, but have a strong passion for nature. They really care about what we are doing. Our protected areas themselves are a long-standing, established approach. We have many diverse hard and soft skills. We know how to engage people. We deal with conflict resolution. We can combine theoretical ideas and test them out in practice. We have experience of delivering projects large and small, so we have a strong success story where we've had the resources to do that. And building on that part about involving other people, we have a large audience. We provide safe places and encourage education and learning. We provide places for research institutions to test out ideas. We encourage and support social participation and volunteering. And many of our protected areas are popular places for recreation and people to find quiet and inspiration. But importantly, they are also supporting industries, economic industries, food and farming, tourism, the recreational business, and many more. And for our purposes, they also have this large audience. This large audience of different people have an interest in nature. They share some of our values. We have, through our protected areas, ways of contacting people and encouraging them to care more about the nature they're seeing and appreciating. The protected areas can provide places for us, or a means by which to engage local people in developing how they manage their environment. Many of our more recent designations, I'm thinking here at least in the UK, take a greater account of social and economic factors. They are not just about the importance of nature, they're also about how nature supports people. I think that's been quite an important trend over recent years. And of course, as mentioned before, they have strong legal frameworks. We have, again, the global and supranational legislations and conventions, and we have our own domestic, national and regional legislations to protect our special areas. Our protected areas also provide a basis for other policies and legislations to take account of nature and important nature areas through economic development, agri-environment, forestry type policy, which is a strength, but we have to be careful that those other policies don't think that taking account of protected areas is taking account of nature. There's a difference. Protected areas are still only a small part of nature. One thing I would pose at this point is, it's perhaps a weakness on the legal frameworks part, is that do all our designations protect only what has been important? Does any country have a designation that protects land that could be important, could have nature value, but doesn't have it yet? So moving on to the weaknesses, not quite so many. One of the important first ones is around the image of protected areas, how they are perceived by other people. Certainly in my experience, we had a period of time when we were facing what's been called a democratic deficit. Our protected areas had largely been imposed by, or appear to be imposed by a central organisation which took little account of local people and their livelihoods. I think there's room to debate that, but they are often seen to be run by other people for their elite kind of interests and not for them. Also, many people feel that they just stop things happening, and in many cases that is correct, because that is part of their purpose, to stop inappropriate things happening. And there have been times been mentions about there are just too many and the whole system is just too complicated to understand. And I just insert that map from the Protected Planet website, which does show some countries having a rather high density of protected areas. And also concerns about the cost for benefit of protected areas approach. We have a challenge, and it is, I suppose it's a weakness, that our nature and natural processes and solutions are complex. There are a great many species with an infinite number of interactions, and this goes on over a long time, taking account of changes to environment, changes in all sorts of factors, and is very complicated. And at the same time, we need to convey a message to people, our politicians, our leaders, the general public, which must be understandable and comprehended. Our long-term approach to ecological solutions is at odds with the needs of the short-term needs of politicians and the economy. I'm pretty sure that in a few months' time, when COVID restrictions are lifted, that if we suggest we have a plan to get us out of difficulty in the next 25 to 30 years, that it won't get very much support when the people are trying to restore the economy over the next 2 or 3 years, for example. And another challenge is that because of the long-term nature, is that there are issues around resourcing and delivering ambitious projects over a long time with continuous support. Collaboration, as we know, is important, and as he said, it was a collective effort that was required, and it absolutely is, but it can be slow and it can be difficult to negotiate and get agreement and support from all the players involved. And this is something we need to be looking at various different levels, and potentially building partnerships or with new people, with new players. And here's one that we could have a whole series of webinars trying to resolve this one, I believe. But the question, this is an internal debate amongst conservationists, perhaps, about when we try to encourage other people to see value in nature, and we try to attach a cost or a value to nature, is that we end up with a debate about, is this right? Is it moral? Can you do it? How do you value nature? And we end up with a discussion around the intrinsic value of nature. Does it have an intrinsic value, or are all the values of nature somehow measurable and can be valued? And that's a difficult one, and I suspect it very much depends on how you define the utilitarian nature, or whether things are of a utilitarian value, and also on your personal viewpoint or your beliefs about nature. But I would ask here, is that can we get to a point of delivering a clear message without being hindered by this debate? And finally, on costs, there have been endless discussions around this, but again, connected with the intrinsic value or the utilitarian value of nature. But there have been a growing number of attempts to put a value on nature, natural capital, for example, being one way of doing it. And just a few figures there from UK showing the return on investment of managing land for nature or for in an urban nature kind of manner. So 2 to 1, 8 to 1, 12 to 1. A typical return on investment for a cash investment, if you went to your bank or a stockbroker, you would get about 1.05 to 1.1 to 1. So nature appears to offer a very good return, and additionally, those returns are for everybody, not just the individual investor. But this system has some way to go, because at the moment, due to the difficulties of measuring and valuing biodiversity, these figures are heavily influenced by the values attached to the social benefits, education, recreation, well-being, and carbon for climate mitigation, which can be given a value. So with that, I would just bring that to an end. I'm happy to have discussion or questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. That was very interesting. I think it really helps us, well, frame our mind on the challenges that we are tackling. Now we will move to well, what we call threats and opportunities. So it's more from the external, from what is surrounding the protected areas. And this will be presented by Myrte Vonk from Pure Water and Natuur from the Netherlands. Myrte, whenever you are ready.
Meanwhile, you can already start thinking about your questions. Don't write them down. We'll try to do it more interactively, but start thinking about your questions, okay? Okay, Myrte is ready.
Yes, I'm ready. Hello, everybody. I'm Myrte Vonk. I work as a nature advisor for an NGO, which is responsible for managing 2 Natura 2000 areas at the Dutch coast. And I'm also part of the climate change task force of Europark. And I want to introduce you to the opportunities and threats we identified as a task force. And basically, if we talk about opportunities and threats, we talk about the external factors that influence our protected areas or nature areas. And if you look at opportunities, you can think about changes in technology that offer new possibilities.
Amenazas. Threats es
we talk about needs that society has or people that probably change and offer new opportunities for us. And if we talk about threats, it's about the challenges that our protected areas or nature face. It's about changing technologies that probably make things more difficult, or financial issues. We use these contexts, and those opportunities and threats in the end will help us to identify the main problems we want to address in the white paper, but also the main solutions we can offer to policymakers when we look at protected areas and nature in the period of climate change. We identified 5 opportunities and 5 threats, so that's easy, very balanced. And I think the first one, it's quite important and already mentioned also, is that the fight against climate change is gaining momentum in many sectors of the society. So we can say we have our time with us. Especially in Europe, climate change is no longer denied, and we even see several effects already, and that always helps. We of course had the climate change conference in Paris, but also recently the climate strikes and marches, which also shows that citizens demand more action or climate change to be higher on the political agenda. So we have to make use of this and gain momentum to bring also the role of protected areas under attention. And related to this first point is also a new legal framework that is coming up, and major international agreements that are being reviewed. And 2020 is a very important year if you look from a regulatory perspective, both for biodiversity and climate change. We have a climate law and a climate change adaptation strategy, which are being drafted by the EU, but also, of course, the Green Deal. It has been published by the European Commission. So this also offers opportunities, and especially if we can position nature conservation as a supporting solution to a number of these challenges mentioned in those laws. To help policymakers to find these solutions and also support biodiversity and nature. Because nature can offer several solutions for climate change. So that's the third opportunity we identified. Think about green infrastructure, water buffering, coastal protection. There are many ways in which nature can help us to climate-proof the environment. And that offers a lot of chances for nature, especially outside protected areas, which will in the end also help to enforce nature inside our natural areas. So think about chances for expansion of nature, but also for more biodiversity inside urban areas, which will also benefit the connection of the protected areas in the surroundings. And it will also probably offer opportunities for extra funding of nature adaptation measures. And then that's probably quite a strange opportunity, But besides COVID-19 lockdown offering a lot of hard times and problems, we also think that it offers somehow also an opportunity, because it gives us a glimpse of a slowed down world. We see that now we have a big crisis, that we as a society are also able to to slow down, and even slow down our big economic machine. We see a lot of a drop in carbon emissions. So yeah, as task force, we also said maybe it would be really nice to try to imagine in the post-COVID-19 period to go for a green recovery, a sustainable recovery, and use this crisis to build something nicer, greener, and more sustainable. And then the last opportunity, and that's also a really nice one, is that climate change is a common challenge. It's not only a challenge for us as nature managers, conservationists, researchers. It's a challenge for all of us, and we need to face it together. And that offers chances for collaboration between professional groups that are often against each other, like farmers, local politicians, entrepreneurs, nature conservationists, and now we suddenly have a common interest, and this offers opportunities for example, multifunctional use of space, to probably go for a more biodiverse agricultural system, to make it more resilient against pressures and climate change. So I think the message is we have to do it together, and we have to find solutions that can benefit several fields and areas. And then we come to the threats. Well, the first one is already mentioned by Olivier, I think, and I think it's the overall threat to our natural systems. It's a global collapse, which has also been mentioned in the global biodiversity assessment. And well, there are the 5 key drivers identified, and climate change is one of them. But I think it's important to realize that climate change is not the only pressure, by far not the only pressure on our natural systems, but it will often reinforce the effects of pressures that are already there. And that's related to the second point, the great acceleration, which has been mentioned by Ignace Schops, the president of Europark. And we live in the Anthropocene. The influence of human societies on our natural systems is huge, and almost 1 million species are projected to extinction in the coming decades if we do not act. So I think that's also a very general and important message to give, to promote action. And then some more specific threats. The COVID-19 crisis was already mentioned as an opportunity, but we also realize that it can be a threat, because we've learned from the past that economic recovery is often done at the expense of nature. For example, after the World War II, rebuilding the society is often done without less care for natural resources or environment, because it simply has no priority. So we have to be careful that we do it the right way this time. The second one is that climate change is also leads to a very big transition in our energy system towards renewable energy. And this may lead to even more pressure on life from land due to competition for space. Think about wind turbines solar arrays, huge dams. They can influence all natural processes and compete for land that otherwise can be used for nature and biodiversity. So we need to bring this under attention, that we can combine this energy transition with the development of nature and protection of biodiversity. And then the last thread, that's also a difficult one, and maybe also a little bit related to the intrinsic value point that Stuart mentioned. Nature is often very abstract for most citizens and stakeholders. It's something that's there, that's always been there, and nobody really worries or cares that it will disappear just suddenly. So there's sort of a lack of ownership or responsibility, like wider than just the responsibility we feel as protected area managers. So that can be a threat if you want to bring this topic under attention. The people just take it for granted that nature is there, and what makes it even more difficult probably is that climate change also is something for the long term. So effects, but also effects of measures we take will probably be seen in decades. So it's that makes it even more abstract and probably difficult to create a sense of urgency right now. So that's my presentation, and we are really curious about any additions, questions, things we missed. So I will stop my screen now.
Maybe you can turn on your camera as well, Mert, because we couldn't see you during your presentation. Okay, good.
Hello.
So this is Mert.
So that was Mert Fonk from the Netherlands. Well, thank you very much to all presenters. Yeah, so I hope that what we presented today helps you, frame your reflection around climate change and protected areas. We know it's a difficult topic. Well, nature conservation is already complex, but adding this thing that is all encompassing and at the same time hitting protected areas on very specific aspects is sometimes difficult. So again, keep in mind that this is a work in progress, and we don't work on this SWOT analysis to publish it as the one SWOT analysis about protected areas. It's more a tool that we would like to use to produce a proper policy recommendation that creates and has positive effects for nature conservation across Europe. So any comments, remarks, additions, which are constructive, if possible, are most welcome. Okay, and if you have any need for clarifications, don't hesitate. So we have about half an hour. We'll try to do it live, so not through the chat, except if you cannot speak or if you prefer to write, just let us know. But you just raise your hand. You can raise your hand virtually, I think. There is an option somewhere.
If you go to the list of participants in the bottom, you should be able to raise your hand, even to clap. So now we have a lot of new features in Zoom. Yeah. So you should be able to find it there.
I'm mentioning that because we cannot see everyone at the same time. So if you raise your hand like that, we may miss you. But still, the first question is the harder. So a 10 points bonus for the one who...
Although there are 2 questions on the chat, maybe we can start with those ones, Olivier?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So there is a question from Max. Do we recognize that protected areas may even be under threat from nature conservation itself? We We hear a lot about how to intervene in our forests to make them more climate resistant, but are we actually maybe be damaging more than we are saving? Maybe this is a comment.
No, actually, this is Max.
Okay, go Max. Please explain yourself. That's much better.
We hear a lot about the impact of climate change on forests. Take Germany, the drought that we have. And suddenly we hear about we have to save our forests. We have to do everything about our forests. And there are biologists, there are nature conservationists out there that are afraid that we lose the forest and proud of climate change. And are now exploring introducing invasive species, alien species, not invasive, alien species, Lebanon beech forest trees. We are experimenting with trees out of Iran because we think that will save our forests. But if climate change is happening and therefore it will impact our ecosystem, how far are we willing to go to save what we think our ecosystems should be? And that discussion is, especially in Germany now, hotly debated. So I think we should not oversee that maybe we in this room as well are maybe a threat to the protected areas, to the ecosystem in there themselves.
Thank you very much, Max. I think that's a very good comment that we keep discussing actually. What is the ecosystem? What is the nature we want to protect? And then we reach a level that is close to philosophy, actually, and to creating that vision. So maybe part of our work should be to produce that vision. I've never seen it myself. I haven't been in conservation for long, but I've never seen anywhere, okay, this is what we are trying to achieve. It was more about, okay, we have this, let's try to protect it. That is or the remnants of nature. So maybe producing some kind of vision of what nature should be, highlighting the risk, maybe that should be part of our work. I think that's a very good comment. Stuart, Myrte, and Cerise, don't hesitate to add, or even everyone actually. Huh? We are in an open room. Huh?
I think it's a weakness. Of course, we have to put it in our analysis, and I think we tried saying that one of our weaknesses is that we don't agree on what we want to protect and conserve and in ourselves, and goes also with the value of nature, etc. So, but I think it's a weakness to put in our SWOT analysis.
And curious to see how will Germany choose the species of their forest, because I've been following the debate as well, and that's really a big question: which species should we plant if we think that the scenario says that temperature will be higher and probably our native species won't survive. So I don't know if anyone else in the room is following that debate, but I think Germany will be able to share their lessons very soon because they are really into the topic now. No, Max doesn't agree.
One last comment before I hand over to the next speaker, because I suspect there's many people wanting to ask questions. I think it is triggered by fear. We are afraid to lose our forests. And I'm deeply involved in the discussion with Pierre Ibisch from the HN Eberswalde, and there's a big crowd of scientists who say, if we lose the forest, so what? People have lived in the world on savannas for longer than we have lived in our forests and with our forests. Climate change will force a change. And the question is, how far are we willing to go to try to stop this in our protected areas? Because part of the protected areas was that we do not interfere continuously in there, that we leave them as they are. But now as they are changing, do we accept that protected areas change as part of climate change? Or are we suddenly turning these protected areas again into, excuse my expression, playgrounds for us as nature conservationists to trying to save something that we don't know if we can save it or not? And what will we lose by saving it? Over to the rest.
Yeah, thank you very much, Max. Obviously, that is a long discussion, but your point is well taken. So I see on my screen, I see a raised hand from Alex Springer. If you want to.
And I think Stuart also had something to add, but.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think it's mainly just adding on to sort of Max's things, that it's definitely one of those that I think we do need to try and figure out what it is we need to preserve, because a lot of the protected landscapes are quite different. For example, the South Downs, large chunks of there actually have been managed, have been farmed for a very long time. And that particular landscape isn't just forest, it isn't just heathland. It's one of these ones that you need to try and, again, try and know what you're trying to conserve. And I don't think some sort of politically expedient plans like let's just plant loads of trees is necessarily the direction that things need to go.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Alex, for that comment. We have been discussing as a threat this idea that afforestation is the solution to tackle climate change. So we have obviously identified that we have to promote wetlands and grasslands and oceans and all the other ecosystems as solutions to tackle climate change. Okay, so I see 2 other raised hands, 3 others. We have Cynthia, Patricia, and Jimena. Well, let's first, Cynthia, maybe you want to start? I cannot see you, so.
Cynthia, I'm afraid we can't hear you. I can see you're speaking, but we cannot hear you, although your sound is on. And yeah, no, but it still doesn't work. Maybe while you try to solve, maybe we can pass to the second one. I will write you a message. No, we can't hear you yet.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Okay, then Patricia Casal Rodriguez.
Hi everybody. I'm an environmental consultant. We work with public administrations to help them manage PAs better. And one of the challenges we have to face is mechanisms to improve connectivity. That's an issue that is very commonly posed, not just in natural areas in Spain, but also in other countries. For example, in Latin America, we work a lot in Latin America, and they are very concerned about connectivity and how to reinforce connectivity, not just within the protected area. As Stuart mentioned in his presentation, PAs are just a small part of nature, and we have to consider all the mosaic, the surrounding area where PAs are integrated. And I wonder if within the NaturAdapt project, or if you consider important to provide some managing mechanisms or ideas to identify areas that within that landscape are playing a role in connectivity, even though they are not protected, and how to implement better practices for human activities being developed in those areas, and how to improve that. Do you contemplate any mechanisms to do that? Maybe using GIS technologies to analyze connectivity? How to do that? Do you work with those kind of data and decision-making processes? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, a very interesting point. We have been discussing connectivity. Maybe Anne-Therese, do you have a better view on the overall project? You may want to respond to Patricia.
Okay, yes. Well, in the projects, we are addressing all kind of protected areas and all kind of natural areas. Mm-hmm. So we are not particularly working on specific measures that can be applied in protected areas, because it's too big. So our focus is on the method to analyze, assess the vulnerability of the area, and to try to do an adaptation plan. So our focus is more on the method to do that, and with whom, how, with which steps, etc. But we have also a scientific partner in the project that is a national scientific partner working on nature that works on scientific literature to make a synthesis on 3 subjects that are 3 adaptation measures: translocation, connectivity, and I don't know how it's in English, naturality, you know, a free evolution of the area.
Nature-based solution, something like that.
It's not nature-based solution, it's more not leaving the nature adapt itself without intervening. And so there is a subject on connectivity, and they are doing it right now this year, this literature synthesis. And then the idea is to collect all the material from science, but also from the ground. So the idea is to gather the material and try to draw some conclusions about how it can be done, when in which conditions it's successful, etc., etc. And the idea is to look at protected areas, but also networks of protected areas, and also inside protected areas, so different scales, and once again, scientific and ground literature. So we'll have something about that this year, but not yet.
Yeah.
All right.
If I may add, we are not identifying areas where to put more nature, but we have identified that connectivity, increasing connectivity, helps building a more resilient territory. So this is being discussed. We have also identified that it is a difficult one, because park managers have a mandate to manage what is within the boundaries of the protected areas and not what is outside. So that discussions must happen somewhere else. I really take your point of what are the management mechanisms. I think that's the right question. That will help us. And so that will be adaptation measures. To be frank, in the project, we are not there yet. We are working on vulnerability at the moment, on those aspects of the methodology. But we certainly take your point that managing the increase in connectivity should be part of our thinking process.
I just want to mention something more.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your answers. And just an example of what we did in Natura Network in Canary Islands, in particular in the Tenerife Island. The managers there asked us to identify, using GIS systems, areas that were playing a role as a stepping stones between the protected areas, so they can have like a georeferenced instrument to incorporate to urban plans or development plans in the island, so that they can recognize that they have some ecological corridors that they have to take into account when planning. I think that's a very innovative approach to it that they are taking on the island. And to do that was very complex and very, very difficult, and a lot of work condensed in a few months, which was really a challenge. But I invite you to maybe check it online. There's information, because it's quite interesting. And well, that's the first try that we did to incorporate connectivity, and to identify those areas. We used some species as models for applying modeling to the territory, and identify species that maybe require wider territory for reproduction or for developing their activity. And
Patricia, so I'm not sure how it will fit into this very project, but for sure, as the Europark Federation, we are interested in sharing your results. So don't hesitate to come to me. I will post my email address and to share the information, and then we can see how it fits. Okay.
Good. Great.
But thank you very much for your comment. So let's go back to the other raised hands. We have, well, Cynthia is back.
Yeah, yes, maybe. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, good. Good. Well, thank you for giving the floor. First of all, I've been involved 1 year ago in the, drafting a policy document in the protected area in the Mediterranean. So that's familiar for me, this topic. But I would like to raise your attention about some key messages that I've got from your very interesting presentation, the SWOT analysis and the white paper. So I guess this is very important to take into account in order to have this problem-solving approach and not just raising the attention, but problem-solving approach. So, for example, governance and for example, the involvement, the collaborative approach, the involvement of the key stakeholders, and as well the need of simplify the messages towards the politicians, the policymakers, and to also to get more funding and to use this opportunity of the COVID-19 as a challenge to present maybe a policy document, a position paper towards the European Commission in related to the let's say to the new Green Deal, which is a good framework right now, which can get for the Europark a political endorsement. So, and that's what I would like to say is that maybe in order to try to organize a common approach and to capitalize all your best practices, all your very analytical assessments and models that you are delivering as projects, as European projects, as a network of protected areas. So all these critical mass should be concentrated in one, let's say, I'm a lawyer, so I have this juridical approach position paper in order to get a political endorsement in the framework of the new Green Deal. They are also publishing right now call for proposal for involving SMEs, for example, for this new Green Deal. Climate change is on the priority, political priority of the agenda, the European Union agenda. So therefore, I like the expression when you said green recovery and more sustainable. So this can be the link with COVID, how to face, you know, the second phase and the next time from now until the future, in order to face this problem of pandemic together with the climate change, because 1 year ago, climate change was of the top of the agenda. This year is COVID 2019. So therefore, let's think about the way how to connect all these best practices coming from you together, using this collaborative approach, using this issue of the governance, the good governance, the involvement of the stakeholders, to simplify the messages, and looking for more funding towards the new Green Deal in order to get the political endorsement. Prepare, let's ask, I know very well also the president of Europark. So we met in the past at the Parliament, European Parliament, several times. So ask him, he's very political oriented, ask him to prepare a position paper and to put on the table of the politician right now in order to use the models, not, let's say, as a lawyer, not only as a message, but with solutions. You are providing already solutions. It's now important to get more funding and to get a common approach. To conclude, let's think about also a new regulation, because within the European Green Deal, the new Green Deal, there are also tools, legislative tools, which can somehow put more binding rules for the key stakeholders, for the politician, for the national governments. So what we need now is capitalize all the best practices coming from all your projects, and secondly, ask for political endorsement and new legislation, a new legislative framework, a new regulation, which can take into account all your models, and to ask to the governance, the governments at the national level, to adopt this. And that's the only way that can be really, can have an impact. Otherwise, it's just a fragmentation. So we discuss, we see that we are good, we have a task force, we have experts, we discuss. And the discussion remains a discussion. Somehow there are good impacts at the local level, but we need to spread more this experience. That's
Thank you very much for this vision. I think we share it. I take away the idea that it must be problem solving. I take away that we need to get the political endorsement and that it should be even more binding.
Yes.
So our view in the task force and in the project is that we will do policy papers towards the EU, but basically the EU is working on its documents. And so, you know, the fact that we went digital in Siegen made it possible for the DG Environment and Clima to participate. So we have two representatives, and we are developing a very good relation with them, and they are looking for the same solutions as we do. Obviously, they are not from DG Agri or DG Trade, but there is this discussion. The other thing we have identified is that, well, policy influence or lobbying must be done at every level. And so we can certainly work as Europark Federation as a bridge towards the supranational institutions.
Exactly.
But for protected areas, we believe that the closer contact is at a regional level.
Yes, the regional level, yeah.
And regions.
They have the power also.
Yeah.
So look, if you think about the funding issues, then you have to look for the new programming, operational programming, programs in 2021, 2027, and in the field of European regional development funds and also the agriculture, we must have an integrated approach, an holistic approach. So you have to look at different also sectors, because someone of you was mentioning agriculture. So protected areas are quite close to rural development and agriculture as well. So
yes. Thank you, Cynthia. I need to stop your word. I'm sorry. I don't want to be rude, but it's just that there are other people with a hand raised and we have less than 10 minutes. But thank you very much for your point, Cynthia. And yeah, as Olivia said, I think they will be following the creation of this policy paper. Okay, so back to you, Olivier.
We had Jimena. Who raised her hand. I cannot see her. So you have to unmute first.
Hello, Jimena.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Hello. My name is Jimena. I work in Kullaberg Nature Reserve in Sweden. I work as an environmental projects coordinator. I will be quick as well. I just want to say my comments are almost in the same direction as what Cynthia said, because I think we have to think about the lessons we learned from the COVID-19 crisis. I was checking the statistic of the nature reserve yesterday, and I saw that the amount of visitor increased to the double this year. If you compare it from January to April 2019, it increased the double, the amount of visitors, because in Sweden, we are not in the lockdown. And the government is just suggesting the social distancing and inviting people to visit the protected areas. So I just want to remind that, yeah, we have to strengthen the political lobby, because after the crisis, we know that the budgets that are affected are the money for protected areas and for health system. So we don't know how the next year will be. For example, here in Sweden, just now, we don't have any financial problems, but we don't know what will happen next year. So I think we have to work together, and as Cynthia said, work in a common approach, a more strong political lobby. So the people see the importance of the protected areas now that Europark is also working with this campaign of healthy parks and healthy people. I think what Marta Mujica from Spain says is true. This the decreasing of the carbon emissions is only temporary. The next after the people they open the doors of the lockdown, so people will start to fly again. If you remember, the Greta effect from last year put the climate change in the table, but there was not really nothing was really happening. Just a few things. So I think the political lobby has to be on the table. Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, well, we see in this COVID crisis that having the political endorsement makes a difference. I would disagree with you. I think things are changing, but obviously there is no silver bullet or red button that we can just press and make everything better. It's a step by step, and we are going there. We take your point on the relation between health and protected areas, and the impact on of visitors. Obviously, well, in Brussels we see that the peri-urban parks are assaulted by visitors because they need to just get out. We are under lockdown to a certain extent, and so we see an increase of visitors. So my take on that, and that's maybe personal, but is that why is there so much pressure on protected areas is because it's the last remnants of nature. If we could increase nature outside of protected areas, there will be less pressure inside. Well, thank you very much. We have one more hand raised. That was Ben Ross. Yep.
Oh, yeah, it's picking up on Cynthia's last comments, I think, and a bit about what Jimena was saying there as well. I think, to my mind, a lot of this is about relevance and the relevance of protected areas, and is it a weakness, but also an opportunity? A weakness that we perhaps haven't expressed the importance of protected areas in a more holistic way, by which we can balance the importance of not only protected areas, but the wider countryside with all of the other socio-economic environmental pressures that exist. Have we articulated that much broader vision? Because to my mind, that is the way in which you get political endorsement and increase that relevance of those issues, so that we can place protected areas as that sort of very, very important jigsaw piece in how society and the land and the world functions there. Do we do that well enough is the question for me.
Thank you very much. I don't know if we have an answer. But it's a good comment, and obviously having well-coordinated land management strategies is key. Maybe I would like, so I don't see any other questions. We are coming to the end of this session. Maybe I would like to give the opportunity to the speakers for one last word, if they will. No obligations there. So Stuart, Myrthe, and Cerise, maybe.
I would just say that I've been following the discussion, the chat about the trees in Germany, and I think it actually there's a deeper fundamental question there about protected areas and our approaches to protected areas, and what exactly it is we value from protected areas and the nature more widely. Is it the exact composition that it has been in recent years, or is it more to do with the functioning and the ecosystem services, to use a jargon, that they provide for people in nature, because they require different approaches, and as the discussion says, there is no absolute right answer. There may be some rules or some guidance we could develop, but it will be a consideration of size and scale and timing wherever you are site-based approach, perhaps.
Thank you, Stuart. Mirte? Or Anne-Cerise? Okay. No?
Yeah, well, I think it's also related to what Stuart says, and I think we probably didn't really mention it in our PowerPoint, but we also discussed the fact about the whole Natura 2000 legislation, which is really fixed and not really yeah, there's no space or room for adaptation in those legislation. And that's also something we need to pay attention to. So what do we, how do we conserve our nature, but give enough space for adaptation and new species to adapt to the changing climate?
Thank you. Anne-Cerise?
Well, I just wanted to thank everyone on behalf of the project, because it was very interesting, and I saw that we were very, well, more than 200 people this morning. So that's very, very enthusiastic for us. And for sure, we will send you the presentations, but we will send you, I think, later on also the follow-up of our work, because I see in the chat and also in the discussions that people, you are very interested in this subject. So I hope that we'll be able to find a way to keep in touch. And I will also want to thank the task force for the work we are doing, because we had quite a challenge in a month to work on this SWOT analysis, and I think we did quite an interesting work, and we'll still have work to do, but it's a good start. So thank you, everyone, and I hope we will be able to keep in touch on this project and this idea of the white paper.
Okay. Yeah. So well, you stole my speech, but no. Well, I must say I'm very enthusiastic about this, and it's heartwarming to see that we can gather 200 people around the screen. And we announced the webinar last week. Okay, so it means that we are there, that we are looking at solutions. I think there are many challenges, but we are in the right place in a very interesting time. There is a lot of energy, there are a lot of tools, a lot of means, a lot of opportunities, I believe. It's not easy, for sure, but I'm pretty confident that just by exchanging, cooperating, we can at least hack a number of solutions and improve nature. And I'm insisting on that improved nature. I'm not the one who invented it, but I think that's very valid. If we could just move away from conserving to improving, we could maybe make even more of a difference. So thank you very much to everyone. We will continue doing webinars on climate change and protected areas. We have, I saw a comment saying that our approach was quite broad, and obviously we have a challenge between, you know, nature conservation, climate change, and the very life and management of protected areas, finding the balance between being technical on management processes and addressing the broader issues that needs to be addressed is a challenge, but I take the point, and we'll see how we can develop that. So as Anne-Cerise said, we will follow up by sending you information about the presentations that were made in the SIGEN seminar, so they are accessible online, and we will well share the presentations of today. We don't share the discussions though. We don't share the chat, but so don't hesitate to contact us. Don't hesitate to contact the people you have exchange with. I saw that there were a lot of discussions about forest. I suppose it is a key topic. In the task force, we have a representative of the Federal Forest of Austria. Gerald Plattner, who couldn't come today. So don't hesitate if you want to create subgroups. We can do the link. That's our role. We are this coordination platform. Maybe one last comment, and then we can part. I would like to do a bit of advertising. Europark Spain recently published the English translation of their climate change adaptation manual for protected areas. It is very well done. They put a lot of energy into that, and it exists, and it is available, and it is free, I think. Marta, you correct me. And so don't hesitate. It's an easy read, and there are checklists, a number of questions to ask yourself to start integrating climate change. And I will send the link in the follow-up email. Otherwise, it's in the newsletter that you should have received. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Again, it's very exciting to see that many people from that many organizations in that many countries. So let's keep in touch. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.